Chris, are you ready for the big lunar eclipse?
Oh, absolutely. You know, this particular full moon, according to all the tribal people, is rich with fertility. You know, this is in many tribes around the world, it's referred to as the egg moon, and it's also referred to as a sprouting grass moon and the fish moon, and all of those are symbols we associate with growth and fertility. So this is starting off the advent of spring. It's a very traditionally a very anticipated full moon because it means we're out of winter. We're finally stepping forward into spring, and we're going to see, you know, that wonderful pink blossoms appear that give us the idiom the pink moon also. So yeah, this is going to be a fascinating ride. It's got all kinds of fireworks associated with it, and not only, you know, all of the astrological configurations, but it's also the paschal moon, and the paschal full moon is the Passover. We associate it with the Hebrew vision of the Passover, the Egyptian vision of passage, and of course the first Sunday after that paschal full moon we have Easter. So bunnies and eggs and chocolate and all kinds of wonderful things coming up.
There is so much happening in this eclipse. I mean, as an astrologer, it's a delight to look at it because there's so much happening. We can talk about so much of the astrology and all the little pinpoint stuff like we'll get into, but just overall, when you see so many powerful adjustments happening in our galaxy and in our solar system and what's happening right now in the evolution of our souls, and to bring this powerful eclipse in, it's a statement. I would say it's a statement from spirit. If you want to say it's a statement from God, I would put it out there. But there's been so much misassociation with this full moon being called the blood moon. I read some crazy articles today of referring to this as how this is the Bible trying to bring about this blood moon and the return of Christ. And there's been a lot of stuff going around about this lunar eclipse.
Yeah, most of it, unfortunately, is absolute nonsense. But one of the things that a lot of these Christians that are passionately involved in prophecy and doom and gloom and World War III and, you know, the apocalypse and all that stuff, one of the things they don't recognize is that Christ has already returned. I mean, he's hanging out with absolutely anybody who is receptive to that consciousness. You know, they're looking for somebody to arrive with stallions coming out of the clouds and carrying armor and a sword, and that's beyond absurd. But that creates the panic. It seeds our consciousness within the collective, and keeps people in expectation of the worst possible outcome. So within that, we're really at a point here where I think our dialogue that we're going to be having this evening will clarify a lot of these idioms and get people to look at the deeper process that's going on here. Astrologically, the passage of the moon is associated with the subconscious mind. The passage of the sun is associated with the conscious mind. And it's how the two are interactive within each individual. So when you have an eclipse, either solar or lunar, it means that this is an opportunity for something to come out of the shadows. Because after the shadow passes, and we'll see that shadow moving across the face of the moon on the 15th, and all across North America we'll be able to collectively enjoy this phenomenon. But most importantly, if you pay attention, there will be things that come out of the shadows. And the next few days are going to be that springboard into the next level of your expressing life in a greater way.
Yeah, because these shadows have to deal with very intense bringing about of change. You know, this is a time of change. This is a time of looking at the reflection of who we are and whether or not that's correctly I think, being mirrored in our existence, because I always look at Libra as the mirror. Whether we mirror ourselves in relationships, I think people need to also associate Libra with just mirroring. If you're mirroring your life, if you're mirroring, what are you partnering with, and does that correctly align with you? And that's what this big full moon lunar eclipse is about, is I think understanding even maybe past projections, new projections of self, and whether or not, we're going to get a grip on this, because Mars is involved. Mars is going to be really close to this big lunar eclipse, and you'll be able to see Mars in the middle of this eclipse, which I think is going to be pretty out there. But, it's going to be right on top of this. This has to look at our actions, and then it's what's so interesting about this eclipse is it's all this energy in Aries. We've got Mercury here, which will be exactly on Uranus for this big lunar eclipse, which there is a huge awakening in our minds, in understanding, and it's in the middle of the big T square. So Mercury will be, on Uranus, square in Jupiter, square in Pluto. And speaking of Pluto, it goes retrograde that day of the eclipse, right before the 14th, and that's why I'm bringing up change. I mean, change is the description of this eclipse.
Yeah, it definitely is, and there's a lot of excitement, even on the day that we're releasing this particular video on Friday, because this entire series of phenomenon, the initiation starts with an exact conjunction of Venus and Neptune in Pisces. And Neptune and Venus are very symbiotic. They like each other tremendously. And what it does is it brings the spirituality of Neptune down into that intimate level of how Venus is processing this energy and dispensing it to us. So we start off the journey with a beautiful Friday with a lot of transcendental energy, for lack of a better word, that's going to be coming up from source. It's going to be coming up from within you. You don't have to look around you. You don't have to look outside, because this is coming from within, from the depths and the core of your soul. And then as Venus continues to advance over the next few days, we're going to see it position itself between what? Neptune and Chiron, the spiritual fundamentals of reality, true reality, the spiritual reality, and the capacity to heal. And within that process of healing that we all get through that avenue of Chiron, Venus is going to be synthesizing and weaving these two energies together. So I'm thinking that people over the weekend are really going to be feeling kind of a mystical bent. They're going to be feeling somewhat buoyant. They're going to be feeling perhaps a little bit confused, because we've got, Neptune doing its thing in Pisces. But the overall energy that kicks off these series of events is going to be something that is, the preparation is going to be presented to you. It'll come from within. You'll know how to handle the journey and to ride the surf, experience the bumps as we advance toward that full moon.
Yeah, this is definitely that prep period this weekend, because you're right. Venus on Neptune is magical. It's opening up powerful spiritual doors into places that sometimes are maybe not understandable, which I think can add to that confusion you spoke of. But what's interesting is that moon in Virgo that opposes all this energy tries to make practical sense of everything, especially of maybe some really wild fantasies or feelings or emotions. And especially as Venus and Neptune are getting close, this is our relationship energies. I mean, this is really uncovering kind of things behind the veil, spiritual stories, spiritual magical stuff, unconscious behaviors. Where can we find consciousness in our values, our relationships, and so forth? And how do we make practicality? How do we make this reality? That's that moon really, I think, in Virgo, trying to pull all this here. And as we step out of this weekend and come ready for this big eclipse at the beginning of this week, it's kind of on like Donkey Kong. I think we just step right into this, and there's excitement in the air, because Mercury's going to be coming next to Uranus throughout the weekend and into this eclipse. So I don't think there's a way to escape the grip of how powerful Tuesday into Wednesday will be. I think you just can't escape it no matter what happens.
Exactly, but at the same time, I think it's very important that people realize they don't have to be victims of it either, because these are processes that are very profound. They're taking us on our own personal journey of evolution and expansion and comprehension of the bigger world that we're participating in. And the thing that I like looking at in that passage of the moon as it'll be moving through Virgo is that on Friday it's going to be in a very, very tight sextile to Jupiter in Cancer. And so it's going to be very receptive to expanding the heart energy, to expanding your emotional awareness, because Jupiter in the sign of the moon in Cancer, feeding into that analytical, that comprehending part of your chart, really gives you a very nice epiphany kind of energy, that allowance for insights to flow very gently up to the surface of consciousness. And again, that's going to feed into what we're doing as we advance through the weekend and continue to move toward that that full moon and as you had mentioned, that retrograde of Pluto.
And I think we need to talk about this, probably one of the most points, which, you know, maybe there might be some people that miss this part, because Pluto is that uncoverer. Pluto is that one behind the scenes in the underworld. And here's Pluto going retrograde, which if you don't know what retrograde means, you know, it's going backwards. And Pluto is the most powerful planet to go retrograde. You feel it because it's been 6 months since the last direction shift of Pluto. And I always notice with Pluto retrogrades, extreme change in people's lives by itself. So to add the most potent, I think, transit astrologically, one of them, and I would put it in the top 3, I'd say it's one of the big boys. Throw that in on the day of the most powerful big boy lunar eclipse that you could ask for. This shows me that it all is bringing towards this point, and the electricity of Mercury and Uranus in the middle of this big T square, which actually is turning into a cardinal cross because Mars will be at 16 degrees. Now it's a cross. You know, there is just so many sides of life all forced into a blender. This is also all of the different seasons coming together, all the elements coming together, fire, earth, wind, water, turning into this powerful, magical, you know, mixture of alchemy. That there's an alchemy in your life that comes into a tornado, and you know what? It can bring about some of the greatest change you've ever wanted in your life. Before we got on here to do this, Chris and I were talking about this, and Chris said it beautifully. This could be one of the most beautiful things ever, you know, and I agree. I think this can be one of the most radical, changing, epiphany, magical door opening, because I've been saying in my horoscopes that Jupiter is the door opener, and to have it in the middle of a cardinal cross with Pluto opposing it exactly, Mercury and Uranus squaring this, these are huge doors trying to open. And it's not a door that's just, you know, a door that we walk through when we go to get to the bathroom in the morning. No, this is a huge door that opens up to the powers of, you know, out of this world transformational things. It's going to take some rebirth to open these doors. It's going to take some radical energy. It's going to take some strong action. And I think that's what Jupiter is doing in its exalted position of Cancer, is trying to open powerful emotional doors. And Venus in Pisces is exalted, so that's a great position for Venus. The Sun in Aries is exalted. So there's all this really powerful exalted energy around that I think is here to open us up to greatness, to open us up to something so powerful. This is usually when events that you never could have dreamed possible could have happened in your life can actually happen.
Well, and very importantly, we have to recognize that a lot of the effect of this tremendous collaboration of energies that are going to be going on within the heavens, we're not going to immediately be able to identify it. So it's going to be something that is sustained over the next few weeks and into, uh, as you had mentioned when we were discussing it, as we see Mars go direct, and that's when we're going to really see, that springboard, that energy in that release mode. So you're really not going to fully comprehend all the things that have been going on within you as well as within society around you until we have moved well past Aries time and we've gotten deeply into that period of Taurus time. And the interesting thing is that of all the planets, the one that's really offline for all this phenomenon that is going to be occurring is Saturn, and Saturn is the great teacher. And I see Saturn's activity being offline as being absorptive. Saturn is drawing all of this energy into its general zone of comprehension, and we're going to observe Saturn when it does go direct. It's going to be spinning off all of the events and all of the catalysts that we've been going through and that we've had to accommodate. It's going to be using those elements over the next few months to springboard us to a much higher plateau. So, it's not like the heavens are going to part and Jesus is going to show up and condemn everybody and say, God's pissed off, we're going to squash you like a bunch of bugs. But rather, it's going to be a very phenomenal period of awakening, and it's sparked at this point, and then it continues to present us with additional sparks over the next few months.
Yeah, there is a lot of sparks. Mercury in Aries already is a very sparky thing. It wants to start fires really fast. And as it gets on Uranus, it's excited to. And I think that we got to maybe the things to watch too in this eclipse, which, because there are a lot of squares, I think we do have to watch how we process things. Mercury is going to be on Uranus. It's forcing you to be okay with, I think, the new. I think if you're willing to kind of not be ready to maybe accept new energy, and you're wanting to step into that Pluto kind of old, Capricorn way, I think you could be a little bit of an issue here. I think if you're trying to hold on to an old way of life, when the universe is trying to rip this all apart and spread a new vibe in your life, I think it can become really hard, on people. And I think this is a time of, if you want to look at this, looking at the actions you take. That I think that this is about finding true vibrations that reflect you correctly. And that's what Aries is about, is your reflection of self. And Libra is the mirror of that. And this full moon lunar eclipse wants to highlight that, and Mars and the actions you take. Do you have the right reflector on? And are you looking in the mirror correctly of who you are? I think this is very personal, this eclipse, to each individual person's unique story. And the relationships that deal with that. I mean, it's Libra. The relationships are going to be involved. And especially as Venus has just come off of Neptune, I think there were plenty of signs before this eclipse to kind of maybe unveil you maybe what's going to happen in the story. You might not know the outcome, because one thing about Mercury and Uranus, it'll be the last thing that you thought it was. So I would prepare for any outcome and all over the place. I don't think you can think that you know where it'll be, because I think that God's going to give you a whole entire crazy, like a total epiphany or a total radical story that you wouldn't have predicted to make it exciting,
Yeah, that definitely is true. And as we're watching all of this dance continue to evolve, another thing that I find very interesting is that we're seeing the number 13 show up. We're seeing the 13th degree of Capricorn. We're seeing the 13th degree of Cancer, the 13th degree of Aries, and then, of course, Mars will be moving into the 13th degree of Libra. And one of the things I would suggest to people is do a little research on a thing called the Sabian symbols, because the Sabian symbols fractionate the entire zodiac. It fractionates all 360 degrees and assigns a specific idea, an image to each degree. So if you go online and look up the Sabian symbols and play around with that, you can almost create a storyline about the placement of this grand cross that we're walking toward, that is going to be actually filling out and intensifying next week. So, you know, we'll be talking about that, and if you come back next week, we'll probably once again be able to dialogue about the Sabian symbols. But if you're curious, you might want to go online and find out what the Sabian symbols are all about, and then you can kind of create your own story around the meaning of this 13th degree in these positions of ego, community, you know, the heart and home of Cancer, and the high point of the chart, the place where the sun is at midday, which is up there in Capricorn. So 13 is kind of a fun number to think about in regards to all the events that we're being led up to here.
Yeah, 13 is a powerful number, but I am just overwhelmed by the signs that I think the universe has given you before this event. I think that's what the universe has done. I think that even though it will be a radical story that will trip you out and excite you, I think there have been plenty of signs. We had a huge Mercury retrograde before all this. We've had all this Pisces energy come in. You know, Venus has passed over Neptune, which I'd pay attention to the weekend before this that you're stepping into watching this, because I guarantee you the signs are written all over the weekend of what's coming. And it's going to flex your muscle of how well you are as an intuitive in yourself. I think you should be prepared for the feelings that you know are coming, and to be excited for that. That's what this is about. This is also a time of release. Pluto retrograde is about death, and we've got a lot to let go of. And you know what? It's Pluto and Capricorn. This is dealing with structures, which I always call Pluto and Capricorn concrete. You know, this is going to break concrete in people's lives. And it's trying to move things so it gets you into new systems, new places of control, you know, new foundations in your life, and you've got to be willing to allow that jackhammer to come in. It's a lot easier when the jackhammer comes in and you just like go with the flow, you know. It just is. It's really here to loosen the concrete and the gravel, to move your energy more efficiently, and especially as it's opposing Jupiter, the biggest planet, having the smallest planet oppose it. You know, there's powerful doors trying to open if you allow the death to happen. But if you don't, that's the bummer in Cardinal Cross, is it's more than one set of oppositions. You're going to have two or more, and so oppositions require both sides to get along to work. So Pluto and Jupiter is, to open doors, you must change. To believe in something and go on an adventure, you must change. You know, it's like that's the only way it works. And then this Mars, you know, energy opposing, you know, Uranus is, you're going to have to take action, and you better take some wild out of this world action, you know. And I think with the squares that can become very difficult, but it's not difficult if you're ready to put on a crazy hat, take the action, change your life, and be willing to go with the trust in the universe, and to go. Like, this is a crazy corner that it can be freaky, but don't be freaked out, because if you trust in this and you go with it, it'll change your life for the rest of your life in the positive.
It definitely will. It's going to be interesting also to watch how the real way we incorporate this manifests, because we're looking at, you know, the heavy outer planets as being the major players. We've got Uranus, Pluto, and Jupiter as the major players, and then we've got one of the personal planets, and that's Mercury, Mars, Venus, Earth, Sun, and Moon. And Mars is going to be, interestingly enough, the channel that all of this outer planetary energy is going to be manifest through. So women are going to have to embrace their own inner masculine side. They're going to have to really look at where Mars is located in the chart and concentrate on that area over the passage of this full moon, and then as we continue to advance toward that grand square, because that's how you're going to manifest it in your personal day-to-day life. And you also want to really study, you know, the positioning of outer planets as regarding societal change, and inner planets as your own personal transformation in the midst of this. So very, very exciting times ahead for us.
Yeah, and I guess just right after that eclipse, you know, the moon comes into Scorpio for the rest of the week. You know, the sun's getting ready to leave Aries, but it really isn't until, you know, when we come back for the next show, when we have more to talk about with the sun getting ready for the other eclipse, the cardinal cross that's coming. So I think that days following the eclipse, it'll be a lot to process. It'll be a lot to get deep in our feelings with and see how, and you know, one thing about Scorpio is it's about change. And I think that we're going to be very emotional over the change that comes, very personal, very in our own worlds. So I think allow people to go through what they're going to have to go through this week. This is definitely not a week to push your own crap on people. I think you're going to have to know that everybody's going through a lot of change. Everybody's going through a lot of personal stuff, and to let that happen. I'd love to see, you know, what the cards say, because, you know, I don't think the astrology has much more for us to bring up. I mean, I think it's very clear, you know.
Yeah, I think we gave people some really positive insight, and you know, don't go there with all the gloom and doom stuff. I mean, there are plenty of astrologers on YouTube and through other resources who are going to tell you the worst possible outcome because of the planetary positions, and that is something that you will unconsciously manifest if you feed on that. So, you know, take 2 steps back, breathe deeply. So we're starting out, interestingly enough, I always want to pull cards like this. Friday's energy is a death card. So as we're stepping into the weekend, we're shedding the old skin. We are becoming, you know, the caterpillar moving into chrysalis. And with that, there may be, you know, this Venus-Neptune energy may come up as a little bit of melancholy, you know, not so much depression, but noticing highs and lows emotionally throughout the weekend. As we advance into the weekend, we have the 3 of Rods, and this is really a card about anticipation. You know, this is about the events and the intentions that you have put out into the universe. And all of a sudden you're beginning to realize, hey, some of these things are starting to come back to me. Some of my ships are coming in and they're going to be laden with gold. And I think that really is, you know, going to give us a sense of real optimism over this weekend. So we're going to start off with a little bit of highs and lows, and very optimistic and, you know, very passionate about where we're going and what we're doing, because rods are fire. By Sunday, Monday, there's going to be kind of that calm before the storm, I guess you could say, energy. This is a 9 of coins, 9 of pentacles, and this is serenity. This is in that peace garden that we all really have in the back of our consciousness, and often we forget to retreat there and regroup. But this is saying it's going to be very easy to access that inner calmness as we see the planets configure with this full moon. Then this full moon, we're looking at temperance, and that's moderation, and that's also being very grounded. You know, you can see this person's got 1 foot in the water, 1 foot on solid earth, and is balancing the other 2 elements of air and fire. So it's really a period before the big fireworks where you want to get centered, where you want to spend a little time in intimate conversation with Spirit. You want to talk to God about what you're doing and ask for that higher presence to give you some feedback, to give you some insight as to, you know, what the next step is, what all of these circumstances are, and how you're going to address the changes that are coming up in your life. And then, after this full moon event, we move into a starry, starry night, as Vincent van Gogh presented to us in some of his paintings. We've got the star card, and this is hope and promise, and the card of pure potentialities. So with this full moon, if you're planting seeds, if you're doing your spiritual work, you'll find that the journey will be immensely rewarding, and it will in fact lead you to a precipice where you're no longer looking up at the stars, but you're beginning to look out upon the stars. And this is the beauty of what a shift in consciousness can do for you as an individual. It leads you to that higher perspective, and it opens up the gates for you to advance into a much grander experience of life in general.
Wow, I love that you pulled the death card first and that 3 of rods, because it's almost like we gotta get, I always look at the 3 of rods as also a vision quest of kind of having the world in your hands, because he always has the world in his hands, like, and he's looking out at the vision. And I think that there's a lot to die in our life, but a lot to be reborn, and we gotta get our visions together, get inside with ourselves. And I love that the temperance card gets pulled for the eclipse. I mean, talk about God moving mountains and having volcanoes, but the calmness in that card in the middle of Earth transitioning, in the middle of nature doing its natural dance, in the middle of the beauty of angelic realms coming in. I mean, like, to us, it might, to some, I guess it's your own conscious awareness, like you brought up before we just pulled the cards. Like, if you're going to fall for the doom and gloom story, like, it can be volcanoes and da-da-da, or it could just be angelic, you know, the pouring of water and beauty. And I think that this is a really good signal of that. And then I think that star card is excellent. I think it's kind of, the star card to me is a little bit like the death card. I think it's like the cousin of the death card, like the aftermath of the death and what you're left with, and how there are stars guiding the way, and that you are naked and you have this new beginning and start.
Yeah, it's really a very powerful era for us, and those of us who have lived long enough to witness this, I think, especially people my age, you know, we're realizing how much life has transformed us, and at the same time how much we have transformed the lives of those around us and the life that's expressing itself on this planet. So this is a major event in the chronology of Earth history, and I think we should definitely honor it, respect it, do our own rituals around it, do our own blessings around it, forgive and release, you know, and really make it a personal event, a personal celebration of your life's evolution.
Yeah, it's very personal, and I think you're right. We have to do our own way of connecting, and whether it's rituals, I've been preaching meditation pretty heavy for this one. And I also think it's important to cut cords. Like, cut your cords, cut the energies that you don't want of energy around you. Because if you're connected to a relationship in the middle of this eclipse and they're going through their own crap and you don't want to be energetically connected with them, and it's just been negative in your life and everything, you don't want that to come into your world, you know? Like, part of Aries is to be a little bit selfish, and even though a full moon in Libra might want you to not be selfish, the truth is it's a kind of a double paradox, kind of weird road that, you know, you got to put your oxygen mask on first so you can help out other people, and you've got to be connected in relationships that allow you to be you and truly you. And I think that's an important message through this one.
Yes, it definitely is. As we look at the positioning of the sun and moon, Aries is the ego, and the ego takes everything personally, and Libra is, you know, friends, associates, companions, and they take things very impersonally. So we're removing ourselves from personalizing every event that we encounter and personalizing our relationships with people and becoming impersonal and just looking at them and saying, oh, that's interesting, you know, and I don't have to step in that pile of dog crap in the middle of the street. So it doesn't mean you dump people. It doesn't mean that you push people out of your life, but it does mean that you step back from your ego's investment in what can I get out of this? What's to be gained for me? Become impersonal during this full moon because it'll really give you a lot more power to ride the surf.
Yeah, and you know what? Pay attention to the deeper emotional aspect than the mental or the conquering mode. You know, that's, I think, that dormant Saturn and Scorpio there. The wise choice is to connect on a deeper, more enriched spiritual level.
Absolutely, yes. To have compassion, but don't get drawn into the drama. Don't get drawn into the darkness that the universe always presents to us, because there's a certain part of our own personalities that like the darkness, and we have to transcend that. Well, it was a great discussion, David. I think we're both going to be riding this one with all kinds of exciting tales to tell.
Yes, you know, this will be one of those things that bring up tales. And, you know, believe it or not, I think this period is unveiling tales that become great stories, that become great parts of, you know what, maybe that generations after us will be talking about. And even though we don't see it that way, you never do when you're in the middle of it, I'd pay attention to that, you know. And I definitely think there's a lot to pay attention to here. And it's exciting, and it's revolutionary, and I think that there's something very revolutionary that's going to come after this in all of our lives, individually, globally, spiritually. I won't get too spiritual on people, but I believe this is a big, I want to say earth shift, but I've always believed in this new earth forming, and I believe that it takes powerful events like this to really move things into that kind of energy. So
Exactly. It's go back and read the Celestine Prophecy. Remember that book from 20 years ago? You know, there's a lot of imagery in that book that gives us a hint of what we're evolving toward.
And make sure you guys follow Onefeather on Facebook and Twitter, because he posts every day the most amazing quotes that you will ever read in your life that will change your life and help you through all this. So
thank you, David. I appreciate that. And yeah, who knows? I may even drag my ass down to Arizona when you have your big adventure with Jupiter and the Sun entering Aries.
Wow. So, well, I'll talk with you about that. I need to make something happen there for you. So
it's going to be a powerful shift and good times ahead. Yeehaw.
yes, yes, yes. Well, I look forward to everything, and I thank you for doing this reading, and of course for being here every week. And I can't wait to see what we come up with at the end of this. So
absolutely, forward and upward, onward and upward.
all righty. Well, I will talk to you next week.
Great. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.